Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the narrative panel here at Into Games Career Fair 2021. My name is Rhianne Murphy. I am a narrative designer over at Sumo Sheffield, and today we're just going to have some chill chatting to my other narrative designer colleagues for the next, I think, about 30 minutes or so, talking about how we each got into the industry for narrative, talking about maybe a couple of our responsibilities and answering any questions that you might have near the end. If you do have any questions, please join the Into Games Discord. You probably heard that a million times today if you've been listening so far. But yes, we will be going through a couple of the questions in the live panel channel, rhyming, at the end of this stream today. So first of all, we're going to go around, at least on my end, the square in my order. Hopefully it's the same for everyone else. Just introduce yourselves, folks, and your titles. So, Laura, we're going to start with you, please.
Okay, hopefully you can all hear me okay. I am Laura. So I'm a junior narrative designer with Sumo Sheffield. I'm quite new to my role, so I think I started in April. So I think I'm going to be pretty well placed to talk about joining the games industry and narrative design. But prior to that, I worked in marketing. So I've done a little career switcheroo. But yeah, I'm going to go down. And Dale, you are up.
This is a good thing like this, is it?
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Dale. I've recently joined Sumo. Very excited to do so. And previous to that, I spent 20 years at Rare, where I started out as a tester. So weirdly, these guys are probably going to be way more useful with facts about how to get into the industry as it is now. But I can probably annoy you with how stuff was 20 years ago. All I can say is things change, things will be different, and things will probably be different for you guys too. So yeah, over to it's this direction. It mirrors.
Yeah.
Hi, Sarah. Sarah, the one who's an actual writer because she's got it in her background. So that's looking good.
Oh yes, some nice environmental storytelling right here. I'm including a tutorial into this panel. No, I'm joking. Hi, yes. So I'm Sarah Longthorne. I'm narrative designer at Sumo Nottingham. I'm currently the only one, but with time. So I started out in the games industry at Jagex, where I was a marketer. Then went into narrative design first as a freelancer, then at Fusebox, and now I'm here. So back to you, Rhianne.
This is going to be the theme.
Yeah.
I'll mix it up. I'll try and make it interesting. But on the topic of we're discussing where we kind of started from. Laura, you mentioned marketing. Dale, you mentioned QA, and Sarah mentioned the environmental storytelling in your background. Starting with Sarah, then going the opposite way around. I know personally, I started in level design and made my way from narrative from level design. But I think maybe we can discuss a little bit more in detail about our journeys entering narrative design, because I don't think there's like one specific way, and there isn't in games in general, but I think narrative, there's not too much known about the role because it is kind of a new role compared to some of the others. So starting with you then, Sarah, how did you fall into narrative design? Like, what's your journey?
I'll start with uni. So I've always wanted to be a writer. I went to uni to do script writing and performance. I was kind of like a writer actor, And after uni, I just didn't know what I could actually do with that. So film and TV seemed like something that other people did. And I was like, well, I guess the only thing that I can think of that seems realistic, realism is always the thing that seems realistic, is marketing. So I went into marketing. Every business needs a marketer, right? And I did that for a few years, and to be honest, I got very depressed. I wasn't really doing what I wanted to do. I wasn't in the industries I wanted to be in. And then one of my colleagues said to me, well, we have a games studio literally here in this city. They're hiring for a marketing role. Why don't you go do this there? And maybe you'll be happier. So I did. I applied for it. I didn't have all the skills I needed, so I took time out of work to learn those skills. And then I sort of proved that I could do them in my application. I got the job, and I was Jagex doing marketing for about 2 years. And it was shortly after joining that I realised, hang on, these games I've been playing, there's someone writing this stuff. There's something going on here this whole time. And so I started looking into it. I started talking to people who were sort of higher up in the position to sort of offer opportunities, I guess. So I started asking for those opportunities to contribute with my writing. And at the start, that was things like, short stories for RuneScape, writing bark lines and things for new heroes in Block and Load, which is another game that we had. And yeah, so that was kind of the start of my portfolio, though I didn't realize it. And yeah, there was also like in-house game jams and game design initiatives. I got involved with everything that I could, and I basically turned it into a portfolio. So by the time I decided I was done with marketing, I was done with Jagex, I had something to work with, and I supplemented that with original pieces. I'd been playing a lot of games. I had an idea of maybe how these things were written, about what was needed from a games writer or a narrative designer, and I kind of just tried my hand and put it into a portfolio. I joined Twitter, started networking, found a mentor in Greg Buchanan who gave me feedback on that portfolio. I started applying, and it worked out, and found my way to Fusebox and then to here. So that's my story.
No, it's super interesting.
Oh, okay. I was trying to figure out which way it goes. This way.
I think but... I was going to say, just on the topic of going from marketing, I thought maybe it would be appropriate then to head over to Laura, because Laura, you've got kind of almost a similar direction diagonally. We're going to go diagonally.
Oh gosh,
very stressful.
Yeah, like our stories are quite similar. So I studied creative writing at uni. I was in the same boat. I just really loved writing. That was essays at school because I'm a big nerd. But like just writing in general, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. Like, how do you just become a published writer? Like, can you just be a writer? I don't know. So from that, I kind of went down the marketing route, worked at a few different companies where I would do things like email marketing, social media and stuff. And I eventually got a job at Sumo Digital. When I remember applying for the marketing position at Sumo and thinking like, it would be really cool to be on the development team, but that's like a dream. Like that would never happen. And then when I was at Sumo, I got to know a bunch of you guys. So Sarah was hugely helpful and taught me a whole bunch about narrative design. And then I was able to get this position as a junior narrative designer, which was just like a dream come true. So yeah, it was pretty wild. I think the move from marketing to narrative design or other kind of writing based kind of fields feels quite natural because you're still using words and you're still communicating. So I think it appeals to it's a good switch, basically. It's like a natural kind of jump across. I'm rambling. Dale,
no, you're not at all.
Not really useful. So I'm going to prove that you don't have to be a marketer to do narrative design. Although I'm sure it helps.
Counteract me.
So at school, my A-levels were like chemistry and biology, so a load of science stuff, and then English and philosophy. So like I just couldn't decide what I wanted to do. I'm 46 now. At some point, I will decide what I want to do with my life. And I went to go to university to go study biology. So I'm a trained biologist. It's really not very helpful when making games. Recently, I was very lucky to design some plants and animals for a video game. So 20 years later, it pays off. But I was basically wasting my time at university mucking around making films. And later on, I started to run a website about filmmaking and just sort of gathering information and sharing it with other people as I was discovering stuff myself. And someone where I started to work, so when I worked at Cardiff University briefly, someone said, "Oh, my son gets to test video games. He gets to play games all day." And I'm like, that's the biggest lie, because like you don't brilliant games all day. You get to play games that are still in the process of being made, and as a result, you learn loads about how to make them yourself. And I spent 14 months in testing, and I was really lucky that somebody had seen that I'd been doing the website and filmmaking and said, could I come and write them a story for a first-person shooter? And it was a sequel. So I had like that wealth of lore that they worked on previously to add to the work I was going to be doing. And as a result, people just keep asking you to do stuff when you join a team. Or it certainly was like that back in the day. So they would say, "Oh, can you just set this up for us?" So you're like, "I don't know how, but I'm going to go do it anyway." Or could you just design a single player level? So you just keep saying yes, and I encourage everyone to go do this as well. Because if you're lucky enough to be on a team, and if people ask you to do stuff, just pick up the work and start doing it, and ask for help if you need help. But they'll probably be really thankful that you're offered to go, yeah, I'll do it. Especially if it's like stuff that people don't jump for. You know, there's some stuff that is like literally grunt work where you have to write or process a ton of information for people. So yeah, I ended up writing stuff for a first-person shooter, and then I've continually been involved in narrative type stuff at Rare. So writing stories for a bunch of games, or making documentaries for a game called Rare Replay, and doing stuff for a website as well. So I never stopped loving stories and all these sort of bits and pieces. And if I'm, not doing sciencey stuff, then all the other stuff is my life is silly worlds and reading and writing all these bits and pieces. So can we go diagonally now? Yeah.
Well, I was gonna.
Your background.
Well, no, I was going to actually just off the back of that ask Dale, just because you've been in the industry, I think, longer than the rest of us on the panel, I'm interested to know like how you've seen a change in people getting into narrative. Because like nowadays you do see like more bespoke courses. I think someone's got an ice cream truck somewhere. I can hear in the background.
Don't let me eat this. I'll get you all ice creams.
Thank you. A 99 with a flake, please. And no, I was genuinely wondering, how have you seen the change in like maybe more junior applicants coming into the industry now with more bespoke or more detailed courses in games compared to like 10, maybe even more years ago? So how have you found that?
When I started out, it was all like coming in through testing. And there was very few, apart from I think engineers came into computer science degrees. And now, like the challenge I had, I wanted to do filmmaking as well. And it was like crazy expensive. I just couldn't afford to do it. There was only a handful of courses in the UK, and you certainly couldn't do it as an undergraduate. Now there's so many more courses and great courses that will like give you that on-ramp into gaming. And so much more, certainly in the teams as well, so much more specialized. I should be good with words, shouldn't I? People are a lot more like focused around what they do. Yeah, sorry, I'll try that.
No,
it's the ice cream. It's the thought of the ice cream. Like I think, yeah, you've got the advantage that you can come in off creative writing or game design degrees and stuff as well. Whereas before we were all a little bit like winging it basically. But I had the advantage of testing as the background there.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks. I guess real quick. Other way. For me, I took an educational route too. I started at college. I took a BTEC level 3 diploma in game design and technology. Thought I was going to come in as a concept artist. Surprise, surprise. I developed using UDK3, I think at the time when I was studying. Fell in love with that and sort of developing in engines and creating that way instead. And from there, did a degree in the same field. And then my first job was an intern at Sumo, as a level designer on Crackdown 3. And during that process, I got to work with some of the senior narrative team at Microsoft on that project. And it opened my views to narrative design. I didn't even know if that was a thing until I actually got into the industry. There's so many jobs in the industry that you don't even know exist until you kind of get in there. And a great piece of advice that was given to me years ago, back when I was at college, was someone from the industry, and I can't remember who it was now, which is really bad of me. But he came and gave a talk, and at the end he said, by the time you've finished your games educational career, like by the time you're going into industry, there will be new jobs that don't even exist yet, because the tech and the industry is moving so quickly. The best thing you can do is just go for what you enjoy, and the rest will fall into place. But yeah, that's kind of the short and sweet version for me. Speaking of sort of what we've done, I think maybe narrative design can be more than just writing. Some people think it's just writing, and that definitely isn't the case. So I think maybe talking about what other responsibilities that we have as a narrative designer. I'm going to go to Laura first. We'll go to Laura.
Oh gosh, yeah. I guess the main one that springs to mind is kind of you're the advocate for the story and for the narrative within the game. So when you're within a team that is like super multidiscipline and you're working with coders and artists and a whole bunch of other people, you have to be that kind of point of contact that is responsible for the narrative and the direction the story is going to go in. So it's not just sitting down, like head down, words everywhere. It's quite like a communicative role. You have to be really open to chatting with people, making sure you're all on the same page. And yeah, I think that's probably like the biggest thing that I learned going in. You can work on your portfolio and you can build your actual writing skills, but a whole massive part of it is also working with other people and being able to convey your ideas and take feedback and find a kind of a good way of your ideas making it into the final game. I think is a big one. I'm going to open it up to the rest of you guys. Anything else that, yeah. Dale.
You basically answered it really well.
Oh gosh,
like,
sorry, yeah.
I think it's the number one thing is the ability to be an advocate for the narrative and like collaborate, present and stuff, and like absorb the ideas of the rest of the team as well and incorporate that into your work. Obviously, a bunch of it can sometimes be working with other IPs, and like the challenge of you might have some very strict rules that you're meant that you are following, of course, not you're meant to follow, that you are following absolutely, to respect like other people's work and to make their stories come alive. I think the real challenge is like the difference compared to when you sat at home writing a story or making your own film and stuff is like stuff will change and like coping with that change and like there's loads of weird constraints inside games you're constantly finding out about. And you're going, okay, I've got to alter this work and I've got to make my story work again. And realizing that, like you said, like the narrative is the cement between all the blocks of the game. So there's all these little bits and pieces that you are trying to make sure that like somebody doesn't do something a bit odd because it's going to conflict with something at this part of the game. So you're basically trying to keep like the whole game in your head at any one time. It's like hugely challenging. And there's always new things as well. Like I think I got to do last year that I thought was really cool was we wrote audio description for some of our trailers so that more people could enjoy it and get a sense of the game. A new thing I've never done before. And yeah, there'll always be a thing where somebody goes, oh, you know words. Like, come on, word person, come and do this for me.
Word monkey.
That's your job title as word monkey. Is that be cool?
Yeah.
I would add to that as well, if that's yeah. Cool. Hi. Yes. So from what I understand, narrative design separately to game writing came about as implementing the narrative into the game. And so for a lot of roles, there's that technical side, which crosses more into design territory. And most narrative design jobs that I see tend to exist on the spectrum between writing and design, and they're usually somewhere in the middle but leaning one way or the other, and you can get a feel for which one it is depending on the job ad itself. So I guess like another thing that I would add to this is more on the design side. So say if it's a game where the narrative and the ways that narrative are communicated are maybe a little bit more complex, then you'd be heavily involved in figuring out how that works. So games with choices and branched endings, for example, or things with narrative systems. Like if you look at a game like, say, top of my head, a go-to example I always use is NeoCab. This idea of choices influencing your mood and your mood influencing the choices that you can then take. Things like that. Or, Reigns Her Majesty. Anything like that which uses narrative as a system, that is where you'll get more maybe design savvy narrative designers. And yeah, so it kind of just depends entirely on your preference. Like for me, I've always done very writing heavy narrative design roles, but like there's always been a fair amount of design in there. I've always done writing, but there's always been that idea of narrative systems playing a heavy role in my work alongside it. So yeah, like it depends on the role itself, on the studio, on the game as well. Some games you'll be involved very early on, and you'll be involved in that conceptualization. How does, you know, as the narrative designer, helping to design this world and figuring out how the mechanics make sense in it. Or you might be involved just very, very late on, and you're sort of patching things together and kind of things that players use. It's like you've been given this robot, and someone's given you like that's the response.
Yeah.
That's the response we have. You've been given like this robot and a bunch of skin, and you're trying to pin skin over this robot and make it look like a human.
This is
Rhianne knows I do very weird
Terrifying.
this is getting strange.
It's very strange, but that's how it feels sometimes when you're brought on very, very late and you're just trying to make everything work. And sometimes, especially for I think freelance work or work where you are brought on late, it's about making it work, using what you have at your disposal, and to be like, what's the best possible thing that I can make from this? What's the best possible narrative explanation for why all these things exist in the same space? And yeah, I'd sort of end up there then. Yeah, that's my answer.
That's all good. That's all good.
Skin
We
on
love
robot.
a slightly strange analogies. But yeah, I do totally agree on the design side of things too, completely depending on the project. Like narrative designers may be required to be savvy in engines to be able to feel comfortable in things like Unreal or Unity or even in-house engines, and to be comfortable with developing alongside code dialogue systems, and sort of fronting that, be able to feel comfortable perhaps dealing with voice actors and helping move that forward, or just as Laura and Dale, you were saying, sort of being that cement and constantly going from design choice to code choice and working with audio just to try and go, oh, how would this, like, it's always questions, how will this affect the story? How will this affect the player? And essentially you being the eyes of the player and feeling the emotions that you hope they would feel, if that makes sense too. So yeah, I think someone said it in the production panel before us, the choice of Excel. I'm very sorry to say this, everybody. If you want to go into narrative design, you're probably going to need Excel, which is totally learnable on the job. But there's so much room for narrative design. It's not just writing. But if you do enjoy the writing side of it, there are so many roles out there that are either narrative design, writers, and as Sarah was saying, completely depends from project and studio. So if, this question for all of you in no particular order, if you were looking to get into narrative now, like if you've got people watching who maybe are starting their journey just out of school, maybe they're a little bit later on in life, but still want to look at developing skills to get into the industry, which, by the way, is totally possible. Age is no factor in getting into games. What would you recommend? Where would you recommend starting? Sarah.
Yeah. We need a hand system now.
Yes,
Yeah.
we do need a hand system.
Yeah.
I think the number one thing for developing those skills, and hopefully already doing this, but play games. The first thing to do is play games, and play them to enjoy them, of course, but play them analytically. The thing that I try to do a lot is I'll be playing something and I will try to imagine what the script looks like in my head as I'm playing it. I do this with films as well. I try to, as I'm playing, imagine what the script looks like. Okay, how are they handling this branching? How does this system work? How would I communicate this system myself if I was writing this into a script? And using that, I try to get a sense of like, okay, what's good, what's not so good. I'll ask myself questions like, okay, what did I like? What didn't I like? Things that I did like, why did I like it? Like, what are the emotions it caused? How did it cause those emotions? The things that I didn't like, why didn't I like them? How would I do it differently? But also, if I was doing it, actually, no, that's not the right way of putting it. Why didn't they do that? The thing that I would have done to improve it, why didn't they do that? Because usually they've had those ideas already. The ideas that we have for how things could have been better, the designers did think of that, but there were reasons they couldn't do it. It might have been budget, it might have been time constraints, it might have been something to do with mechanics, it might have been something thematic, but there would have been reasons why. And it's trying to anticipate those reasons and get into the headspace. It's like, people say thinking with portals. It's like thinking with narrative design. And you get that through playing games and really engaging with them on that other level. And then using that to, I think if you're going into narrative design, to create your portfolio by, creating your own stuff, whether that's in Twine or like Ren'Py, or if it's something like, just writing your own original samples, long form. Just the main thing is that, like, if you're going to apply for stuff, you need a portfolio, whether it's original work or whether it's stuff that you've done freelance or a studio. You need the work to be there, and a lot of the time it is original. So yeah, like, know how to make it a lot of the time by playing and imagining, and there are resources out there as well to help you and sort of guide you. But yeah, that's my answer. Over to somebody else.
I totally second that. I 100% agree. Like, play games that you wouldn't instinctively like pick off the virtual shelf. Like, play ones that kind of push you outside your comfort zone a little bit, and really think about them. And then Sarah, to your second point, I think just go and write things, like have a go at just passing out some ideas, and in a Google Doc or whatever, just put down a whole bunch of dumb ideas and then work on them and chip away at them. I think that's probably the best way to do it. And I guess on the note of a portfolio, like that's hugely important. And I was lucky enough to have Sarah look over my portfolio when I was trying to get into the narrative design side of the industry. But I think I saw one of the questions as well in the chat at the side, wondering what's actually in a portfolio. So just to give a bit of context, like when I was creating mine, I included bark lines, which are just little like snippets, just like really quick phrases that you can overhear or could be said to you. And I also included like voiceover examples. So imagine a game like Portal, which was a really good example given to me. And a lot of that game, you're directed by someone in voiceover. So have a go at writing something similar. Maybe the start of a game that has someone speaking to you in voiceover, giving you instructions. What else did I write? Like branching dialogue as well, or like choices. So if you're talking to someone and you have a response, you can select your response. Try writing a whole bunch of variations of that conversation. And I guess as well, if you go and play your favorite games and think about what it is that you like in them, take that out and try and recreate it yourself. I think is a really good way. You could change the theme up. It could be a different game, a different setting, but consider what parts you liked about it and how you could do it in your own way. I think the main thing for a portfolio is showing that you have a breadth of skills. And it's not just like, here's a story I wrote. It's here's a story I wrote, but I'm showing it to you through bark lines or through something else. It's showing that you can manage words in different ways, I think. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, no, that was great. Considering like you mentioned earlier, you kind of just applied, or not just applied, but you've kind of new into the junior narrative design. What are we doing again? Who are we? Congratulations. So your insight, like your fresh insight, is really valuable, especially I think to everyone else who's watching, who's coming into that same position, maybe just starting their journey into games too. Dale, just to finish off on that question.
I'm going to do it from the different perspective, because recently I was recruiting for a writer. So I can get to see it from the viewpoint of seeing all those portfolios and stuff. And like having those different examples and being able to demonstrate maybe a variety of themes and tones in your work as well, because you're not always going to get to write about gritty space marines. You might be writing about cartoon characters or whatever. Like seeing that breadth would be really helpful. I think also, like, if you can have a portfolio, make sure it's really, really good, and your best stuff is the first stuff we click on. Because like if someone's getting loads of applicants, they're going to go through them pretty quickly. And if they start reading stuff and your stuff is like badly written or full of mistakes and stuff, I'm sure it won't be, I'm sure it'll be brilliant. But you do find those and immediately you're just like onto the next one, because Like,
Yeah.
they've not even bothered to take the time to make sure that this stuff is like really the best stuff. I'm trying to do it without swearing. But yeah, do your really good stuff. And furthermore about playing games, which is, I think, great advice. Play games to completion so you see all of the game as well. Because obviously it's very tempting just to see the beginning part, but like it's interesting to see how the writing goes when it's just the side missions. Sometimes you get games that the main thread is really one style, and you can see that stylistically it's changing, and you're like, why are they doing those sort of things? And watch plays and watch films and read loads. Like, just be a broad person who's into loads of exciting bits of life. I mean, that's the best homework ever, is just to go and enjoy absorbing all these bits of media and stuff. So, oh, and if you're in any way interested in like tabletop role-playing games, like if you can't find other people who you could like make a film with or like make a radio play with, then like tabletop role-playing games, that side, a few of them, yeah, are a great way to think about like game design and writing at the same time. And you can like write stuff and share it with your group and play it really quickly. You can also then like publish it yourself. So if I had applicants who had like entries on Drive-Thru RPG and they'd written adventures and put out PDFs and written settings, that's pretty close to game design stuff for computers without needing the computer, and you can get on it and do it all yourself. You don't need to seek permission or learn any coding or anything to do it. So that's one great way to get into it.
I mean, perfect, guys. I can't really add any more to that. Just to reiterate everything that you've said. So we kind of coming to a close on this panel, and I'm going to move over to some questions. Again, if you have any questions, now's the time to post them on the live panel channel in the Into Games Discord. Oh, that's a mouthful. So we have a question here that asks, are there any creative writing courses specifically for games out there? Or would you suggest trying a normal writing course? And is there much difference?
I'm not sure, to be. I don't know if there is, but I come from a just straight up creative writing background, and I didn't learn anything to do with game writing during my degree. In fact, it was mainly on like screenwriting and poetry and prose. That to me was really beneficial because it kind of broadened my writing skills outside of games. Which is always good. You know, I might want to move into screenwriting in the future, or poetry or something. I'm not sure if there is a specific games writing course. It might fall under kind of game design potentially. You'd have to maybe look into it and see what the modules are. But I'm very much an advocate for the kind of broad approach, and then you can kind of hone in on what it is you're interested in. Unless you guys know of any courses.
I think a few universities are starting to offer them, as Laura said, as an aside to game design. Both of my other mentees are on game design courses, and I think at least one of them is specializing in writing and narrative design storytelling. So they are out there. I think those courses are finding their feet still. I do think more generalistic courses are often helpful just to get a grasp on storytelling in general. I think storytelling is the thing you want to understand, and then how it applies to games is something that you can learn. I learn a lot of what I know from films. I study screenwriting a lot. I tend to, if I'm writing a first draft or something, I write it as a screenplay. And there's so much you can learn from that. Like, a lot of the books that I would recommend are on either prose or screenplays, and then you adapt from there. And you take that and you think, okay, how does this change when I'm in an interactive environment where I'm not only delivering story, but also telling the player what they need to do, but also try not to still be like too on the nose, or, try not to be annoying. So yeah, I think, use it as a transferable skill, go broad and then be transferable. You can totally pick up the way that it changes into narrative design as you go.
And Dale, any?
Sorry. Yeah, I'll do it. I have no idea. I'm afraid I have no idea about the courses and stuff. Sorry.
No, that's all good. From my knowledge, I've never heard of a narrative specific course for games. But again, just reiterating what Laura and Sarah have said. Also, I would say don't necessarily look through universities, there are also plenty of online courses available, which yes, they are like you pay for them to kind of go through them, or you can find a mentor online as well. Some people have mentorships open, like Sarah talked about Greg. And you can also go down those routes. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a specific degree to get into games. Dale.
Please, miss. Things that we did watch recently that were really helpful, and you can get them for like a year's subscription. Sounds like I'm an advert. But the masterclass, and you can hear people like Margaret Atwood, Neil Gaiman, and Aaron Sorkin speak about screenwriting and writing. If you want to hear from people at the top of the game, really interesting. And Dan Brown.
Awesome. Oh, quick, Sarah.
Adding to that, people in games who I think absolutely look to for learning. Emily Short has a lot of really, really cool writing on narrative design and games writing. Greg Buchanan, my own mentor, like he's got like a lot of resources on his website. Susan O'Connor, I've learnt a lot from her, and I think she also leads a class. There are so many people in the games industry who are trying to provide educational resources, and I totally agree with Rhianne as well. Like, you don't necessarily need to go to university. It's helpful, but university isn't for everyone, and it is possible to self-learn. My partner is self-taught completely, and he's done really, really well for himself. So it is possible. It's just having that motivation, that dedication to do the work. Finding those resources and really teaching yourself. So I mentioned books earlier. Two of the books that I would recommend for people who want to write are The Anatomy of Prose by Sacha Black and Writing for Emotional Impact by Carl Iglesias. So check those out, and that should get you sorting on the writing side.
So nipping in quick, just because I'm aware we've got about 5 minutes left and we've had an onslaught of questions, and I didn't expect so many questions at the end. Any advice on how to demonstrate narrative design that isn't just writing examples? So I might keep this off actually. Anything interactable. What will really help narrative design, like take apart from necessarily just writing, is seeing your written work in an interactable format. So whether that be a twine, whether that be a collaboration with a game jam or a solo project, just to demonstrate you understand how to not only implement narrative technically in an engine or whatever you use, but also the theory behind it, the theory behind using branching narrative and how player perception is of that narrative in an interactable format. And I'll open that to everyone else if anyone else has anything to add.
I think documentation, include documentation. So, explanations of your world building or your characters, or ideally, if you've come up with a really cool narrative system, like how that all works, like how does your branching work? What kind of systems are you using? How does the player experience it? I'm currently getting my mentees to create game design documents for the games that they've worked on. And that's been really useful for them. So yeah, taking that time to create the documentation, even if you've already made the game and you've never even made any documentation, make it retrospectively, because having that will show your ability on the design side.
If you're going to share stuff where you coded something, make it really accessible for the people reviewing that stuff as well.
Absolutely.
Because if someone's saying that I need to install the .NET framework, I'm afraid I'm going to skip to the next one, because people might not necessarily allow me to mess with my computer just to look at your sample. So if there's an easy way of showing any of it, then please by all means do that. So yeah, as Rhianne says, something like Twine or a tool like Inkle or something allows you to do something even if you're not technically massively literate.
Or a video of it as well.
Yeah.
There's also Bitsy as well, which is a really cute little game maker as well, which is a good way of, like, you don't have to go into tons of detail with writing. It's a really easy tool. You can make a really cute little game and stick it in your portfolio.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We probably have time for one more question, so I'm really sorry if we haven't answered your question. Like I said at the beginning of the panel, I think myself and Sarah are already on the Discord, so we will be around throughout the day, popping in and maybe answering any of the remaining questions. But for the last one, I guess I'm going to go with what do you look for in, this is a higher apprenticeship application, but I'm going to tweak that, if you don't mind, to what do we look for in applications specifically? Like, what's maybe one good thing that we love looking for, and maybe one thing to avoid? Oh, I've put you on the spot now. I'll start. Go on, I'll start. What's your thing? One good thing then that I always love looking for is, like I said, that interactable content. So being able to quickly look at your portfolio and go, what's that game? And you see a video, like a walkthrough or something to demonstrate what the gameplay is. One thing not to do, which I do tend to skip applications who either I can't access their portfolio straight away, like I can't see their games or their writing straight away. If I can't find it straight away, I'm sorry, I just have to move on because there's so many applicants when it comes to games. What about you guys?
I'm going to put secondarily to ability to write. I'm very particular about writing. I want to see strong ability. I want to see it polished. So aside from that, the main thing that I look for, and I think has been a topic in the industry as well, is empathy. And I mean specifically empathy with the player. If you're a designer, even generally, you need to be someone who can look at the game from the player's perspective. How you feel when you're writing something is very different to how the player feels when they're reading it or playing it. Also, how your character feels is very different, often from how the player feels. For example, in you might have something with like dramatic irony where the character is totally unaware that anything is going on, and we, the audience, are just like so tense because we know there's a bomb under the table. Or, sorry, that just blew up. Or the character might be having a terrible day, and because it's a comedy, we find it hilarious. So being able to empathize with the player and how they are feeling and how they are interpreting this, and not just thinking about it from your perspective or your character's perspective, but thinking about it in terms of the player's emotional journey. And also just like in terms of design, what's going to feel good to them. Like when you're playing games, think about what feels good. What am I enjoying right now? What am I not enjoying right now? And take that into your job, into your work, and try and tune into that whenever you're making these sorts of decisions, whenever you're having these conversations, whenever someone's saying, oh, what about this idea? Think about how would that feel to me if I was playing it? Would it be annoying? Would it be cool? Empathy, essentially. Empathy.
And then, not to rush, but quickly, Laura and Dale.
Oh god.
Dale, no, wait,
I'll
is that pointing to Laura? Is that a hand up?
No,
If you're no gosh, Laura, then I'll jump in.
Yeah, you go, yeah.
If you get set a writing task, really read the questions. If you are not sure about stuff, clarify it with people. Loads of your job's going to be about having conversations. So when I set writing tests and people came back to me and asked me stuff, it was great because it pointed out the fact that maybe I wasn't clear on what I was saying, but also that they're willing to think more deeply about stuff they're going to be writing. And the one to avoid is just make sure your grammar and spelling is just ace. Like we're not all brilliant at it, but there's loads of tools to help us. And we can, all help one another as well by looking over one another's work. So that's two quick things. Back up to Laura.
Yeah, I haven't really had much experience like looking at people applying. Maybe in the future I will. But I guess from like an applicant's point of view, I guess the main thing is don't be afraid to be yourself in your writing. Don't worry about your writing. Just present it with confidence. Obviously, make sure that it's the best it can be. Like, spend that extra time reading through it and getting it absolutely perfect to a point where you're happy with it. But also, if you enjoy writing about, like, I don't know, I can't think of an example that isn't better than Sarah's bomb under the table. But if you enjoy writing about really unusual things, go for it. Just own it and have it in your voice. I think just own your voice as a writer is the main thing.
That, I think, is an awesome quote to end the panel on. Thank you, everyone, so much. Laura, Sarah, Dale, and Into Games as well for having us today. Just a reminder again, we have the Discord, the Into Games Discord, which you can still join, and we'll be around. If you have any portfolios you want us to review, we'll try our best to get through them all under the Design Portfolios channel. And just as a final shout out, any last words from anyone? Maybe if where to contact you or anything you want to plug real quick. We'll start with Laura.
No, nothing to plug. I'm on Twitter. If you want to follow me, I'm sure I'll be tagged in a post about this talk. Yeah, nothing to plug. Dale, quick.
I'm barely on Twitter because I'm old. Follow these people on Twitter though, in whatever direction they're in. Yeah. That way, definitely to Sarah.
Okay, yeah, so I'm on Twitter under at Sarah Longthorne. Very original. Last words? Oh god, that's so sinister. Immediately you said that, I thought cabbage.
Okay, we love it. Cabbage in the
There you
chat,
go.
please. Cabbage in the
Take
chat. And on that note, I'm Rhianne Murphy. You can find me at Rhianne Man on Twitter and other socials. Thank you again so much, folks. We're going to leave you now.